I'm Linda Mariano. I'm the Managing Director of Marketing for Redwood Media Group and Artexpo New York. Welcome to Understanding Art Licensing. This is going to be a fun seminar, and you are lucky today because we've got three industry experts here who can really give you some amazing insights into art licensing and what that means, what to think about it if you're thinking about it, or if you're already involved in the licensing business, how to maybe rethink or retune what you're already doing. My background in art licensing goes back a couple of decades, and I've always been involved in marketing, brand development, and formerly worked for the Thomas Kinkade company and created the licensing programs for the Thomas Kinkade brand. And that's really how I came into the licensing industry a couple of decades ago. Poppy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I'm Poppy Simpson. I'm head of content and curation at Mural, which is, you might have seen some of the mural canvases, digital screens around the exhibition in the last couple of days. It's a Wi-Fi connected canvas, and Vlad, who is the CEO, and I are working on building a new revenue stream for artists online. So that's, I can talk about licensing more generally, but I can also think about like new opportunities that are opening up in the market.
Thanks, Poppy. My name is Vlad. I'm the CEO of Mural, one of the co-founders as well. Our mission is to bring art to a new audience and to make it universally accessible for people. And we're doing that through digital technology. And because of that, we're diving into the world of licensing both as clients and as customers. And we license a lot of artwork from different large companies, but also from individual artists as well. So we have that perspective of purchasing. I'm also on the board of directors at the New York Foundation for the Arts. So I have a nonprofit experience and background working with artists from the grassroots up to established artists. And licensing is something that comes up on a regular basis. So it'll be fun to discuss this topic.
And my name is Jay Landrum. I have been an art attorney for about 25 years. I work with artists in a variety of different aspects, but primarily I do a lot of work within the licensing area, working with artists both on the licensee and licensor front, where they're licensing work from others or where they are licensing their work outward, and doing the agreements that revolve around that. But I also represent artists on every other aspect that they might encounter. But anyhow.
So let's get started by talking about what does it mean? What is the licensing industry? Well, it's about a $241 billion business. That would be with a B. In terms of the global marketplace. So what you need to think about is where's your place in that $241 billion market? And if you look at $241 billion, that's retail revenue. So then you have to come down from that. What is the opportunity for licensing royalty revenue? As a licensor, what is your opportunity? So then that, out of that $241 billion of retail revenue, $13.4 billion results in royalty revenue. Royalties might be anywhere from 2% to 12% of the of the wholesale price. So there's the retail, then there's the wholesale of what your partner, your licensee, sells the work to the retailer for. and you earn your royalty revenue, or the licensor earns their royalty revenue off of that wholesale price. And so then that results in that $13.4 billion. So then look at this pie that you see up on the screen. And you can see where the product categories fall in. Most of it, when you think about licensing, think about Star Wars. There's a good example. Think about Disney, another great example. Think about walking into a Target store. Think about walking into a Walmart store. Think about walking into Bloomingdale's. It doesn't matter. There's going to be licensed product in those stores. Think about walking into a Hallmark card shop. There's going to be licensed product in those stores. So, and what category does that product fall into? So if you look around this wheel that's up on the screen, you'll see that there's just a little tiny bit in there that is publishing. And art publishing falls into that little piece of the pie. But art can be licensed for any of these product categories. So I guess the next question is, how can you research it? How can you find out more about what to look for, where to figure out how you might fit in, where does your artwork fit? So where do we start, Poppy?
Research. You need to, as Linda said, take a step back and take a look at the big picture. Gift stores, department stores, specialty stores, stationery shops, apparel. Whether you're going to Target or Walmart, take a look around and have a look at the kinds of art and the kinds of aesthetics that are being used for different products. So in gift stores, what's on sale and at what price points that might fit with the kind of art that you are creating, or perhaps stationery or paper is more applicable. It's really about taking a look at all those different areas and working out in that pie chart you just saw where you fit best.
Just to pick up on that point, you really do need to be able to look at your work objectively and understand how it fits and where it might fit, because there are products that I represented an artist who painted paintings like pigs sitting around roasting marshmallows over a campfire. She was a great artist when it came to greeting cards and that type of product, wrap, but she was not an artist that was going to go on any kind of fine art collectibles, right? So you really need to be able to look at your own work and envision where it's where it can go. But to that end, if you're going down that route, you want to be an open-minded artist. You want to be able to, the best licensing properties as far as artists go are those artists who are open to hearing how a licensee might want to use their work. So maybe they want to put it on a product you've never thought of before. The best relationships with artists and licensees are when the artist is open to considering different products. So keep that in mind. I mean, what you see as the universe of products is a lot smaller probably than the universe of products that's out there. The other piece to being an artist in the licensing world is you need to accept the fact that this is commercial art. You are taking your work and you're putting it on a lot of different products, and you have to be comfortable with the idea that you're commercializing your products. Some artists just fundamentally do not want to see their product on coffee cups and coasters and calendars, and they just think that cheapens their work. And other artists see that as a way of providing entry into a market and getting some name recognition that they might not otherwise receive. So again, if you are going to go down the path of being a licensor of your work, you need to accept the fact that this is a commercial endeavor.
Yeah, so then after you've said yes to those first steps, it's about figuring out how you're going to work with these potential clients, with these potential new entities that you might have never worked with before. And I think it's important to step outside of the studio and be aware that you will be working with people, with groups that might provide their own input, their own feedback, their own perspective. You might not like that. That's okay. That's part of the process of working with licensors and licensees that have their own unique perspective of how they want to shape your art and fit it into their products. I think it's important to be open to promotion and talking about your artwork, talking about your process, talking about the narrative behind your artwork through different mediums. So whether that's through phone calls or through emails or in-person conversations, you want to be more comfortable than you might be already potentially in talking about your artwork in a way that's promotional. Again, getting back to the commercial side of it, this is a commercial side of the business that requires promotion and being able to sell yourself potentially in a bit of a different way than you've sold yourself or sold your work in the past. That means it's not about one client, but it's maybe potentially talking about a whole demographic that's interested. So maybe you create artwork that is really interesting to teenagers or to a particular group of people. You want to be open about that, and you want to be able to speak about reaching that audience and having your artwork touch something within that audience that is unique. Getting input, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but just feedback, being open to feedback, not necessarily accepting feedback, but at least being able to listen to it without being defensive or without being negative. I think that it's a key to be able to listen. It's up to you how much you want to accept of that, but the first step in listening is having that openness.
Well, and just to interrupt you on that, one aspect of being in licensing as an artist is you really have to get your skin a little thickened, because what will happen is you'll be approached by a licensee that says, purple is in this year. Can you paint some stuff that has more purple in it?
Yeah.
Or they'll say, I love this painting, but we want to just crop out this one section and use that. I don't want to use the whole thing because, this part on the right seems kind of dull to me. So I just want to focus them in on the interesting part of your painting. And, you have to take a step back and say, they want to do this because they're trying to figure out the best way to sell these products. And it may be somewhat at the expense of your work.
It's a trade-off. Like most things in life, it's a decision about whether you want to broaden your audience potentially and reach new people at the trade-off or at the sake of some sort of integrity or some sort of maintenance of full control. And then finally, the last step is the business aspects of it. Licensing is different than direct sales of artwork. And so being able to learn quickly, not necessarily know everything, but being at least cognizant of the fact that new experiences are coming, new business components and new business concepts are going to be introduced to you as an artist, that openness and that readiness is going to be key.
Yeah, and when you're working with a licensee, you're dealing with things such as their product roadmaps and their planograms and all of these things that they use on a retail basis, and that's something you may not be familiar with. You may not understand what it means to have a product on an end cap, but they will know whether they want your product on an end cap or not. And so there's aspects of their business that now have to become part of your business.
So, if you decided that you want to step forward or move forward on this licensing journey, that you've you've thought about the challenges involved, then it's time to think about how do I get myself ready for this. Jay mentioned timelines. There's content timelines as well that retail work to. You know, Mother's Day, Father's Day, there's Christmas, there's Thanksgiving, there's holidays, there's national months, there's all these kinds of things that are worth thinking about when you're beginning to think about the body of work that you're going to put together and get ready for this market. So, artwork in a series or collection. In the same way that when you sell a piece of work in a gallery, a story is important to that individual buyer. A story is important in licensing. Can you tell a visual story that will work in store or will work with a series of products? Can you put together a collection that will encourage repeat business, which will it'll be something people will want to collect in a series or buy either as an individual piece or something as a collection? And can you then get yourself into a situation where in every licensing deal that you're dealing with, you are not having to recrop, re-render, create all these different dimensions and sizes? Can you put together a package, which means that you are ready to do a number of different deals? And what that means is that you have standard sizes, you have clear formats, and you're available to offer up that artwork for multiple different types of product in the retail space. And you know, this last point here is making sure that it's flat rather than sculptural and in color. That's, you know, perhaps an obvious point, but a one that's really important to remember. This art needs to work on lots of different surfaces, but yours needs to be flat.
Yeah, keep in mind, if your work is, let's say you've decided that your style of painting is, all your paintings are a circle. That may work great for gallery work, but it's going to be very difficult from a licensing standpoint because a lot of stuff that goes onto licensing is more square in nature. And so you really have to think about, how does my work translate across to these different products that are being created? And you know, you can do a round puzzle, but that's something that maybe that the puzzle company you're with doesn't have the equipment to create that kind of puzzle. So they're going to want to crop your work. Or if your work is normally shown with, you know, 4 different pieces that all kind of work together, that may work great in a gallery, but it may be very hard to translate to licensed products. So you really need to think about, how does my work go along with the licensee's objectives. And just going back to the comment on the series, the licensee wants to know that you have a body of work that if they have success with you, that they can keep creating more and more products. So you want to be able to show you've got a collection of work, not just a couple of interesting pieces, because they're going to run with a couple of interesting pieces the first time, and then they're going to need to know what's next. And as we talked about, their planogram and their planning for their next products is months, sometimes a year ahead of their production schedule. So they really need to know what you've got to offer next.
So that's a lot. It's a lot of thinking and planning and sorting things out. And I think that as you think about entering into, or maybe you're already in the art licensing business. So let's do this. How many of you are artists? Okay, almost all of you. How many of you are already in the licensing business? Okay. Sort of, maybe, venturing. So let's talk about the licensing business for just a second, because I want to make this point, and we sort of haven't touched on it, although we have in our minds, but I want to clarify for all of you. There are really 2 avenues for the art licensing business. we talked about walking into Walmart or Target or Hallmark or Bloomingdale's and seeing Disney products in the children's department, in the toy department. That's consumer products licensing. Another avenue of licensing is art publishing. There's a number of art publishers that are exhibitors here at Artexpo New York. And what is an art publisher? An art publisher is someone who takes original artwork and from that original artwork creates limited editions and open editions and sells them either in their own gallery, sells them to other galleries, and then you earn revenue, just like if it was a mug, you earn royalty revenue off of those limited editions and open editions. So when we're talking about licensing, we're talking about all of that. A lot of what we're talking about, when you think about what Poppy and Jay said about a collection or a series, if you think about a set of mugs, there might be a set of mugs that Poppy was talking about, seasonal, holidays. So maybe it's a set of 4 mugs, but each one of them have a different image on that set of mugs that's sold as a gift over the holidays. So do you have a series or collection that could be thought of as a holiday series or collection? Do you have a series that is flowers and it could be part of a spring collection? All of those are important aspects. Are you talking to a puzzle company? A puzzle company or that gift company that creates mugs, flags, all of those kinds of products doesn't take in just one image. They want to see an artist that's got that collection. They want to know that, all right, I'm doing product development, and here's an artist that I can work with. Here's an artist who understands how to make their artwork fit the marketplace. Here's an artist that is ready to listen and can work with my suggestions. Here's an artist that can also work quickly and prolifically. Jay mentioned about getting a bit of a thick skin. Love your work. It's terrific. But that blue part, we really see that teal is the trend and the color, and we're really working with that. But we're really trying to create a beach lifestyle series, and this is going to go on a whole group of bedding and textiles. So that purple has got to go because we see teal as being the key color, and we love your landscapes. But can you just make all those changes, please? So the other part, and they were talking also about your work needs to already be captured. High resolution, high integrity, color captures of your work. You're not going to send that to them initially, but once you deliver your artwork, that's what they need. They need those high resolutions. And to give them all of that, you're really great at meeting deadlines. Because they don't want to waste any time. It's going to take them quite a lot of time to get your work on their product and get it into the marketplace. They've got to go to their retailers and sell your product, your artwork on their product into their key retailers.
So, you've thought about
So
where
what's
you
next?
sit. What's next? You've thought about where your work might sit in the marketplace. You've thought about beginning to get yourself ready to deliver your work, and now it's about getting a little bit more in-depth knowledge about the licensing world today. And where do you do that? How do you do that? Go to the key trade shows for art licensing here in the US and worldwide, if possible. Walk those shows. You know, I've walked this show now every day since Friday, and it's just an incredibly useful tool for me as a curator to think about how artists, how gallerists, and how publishers are thinking about presenting work for a specific demographic. And it's overwhelming because there's so much, but you carry on walking around, you carry on having a look, and you begin to be able to identify those key themes. You begin to be able to see which colors and which genres are at the fore. And that's incredibly useful information. Talk to licensing agents and talk to art publishers. Talk to lots of them. Because, you know, there are going to be some agents who have really specific relationships with puzzle makers. There are going to be some who have excellent contacts in the interiors world. There are going to be some who have more experience in the art publishing sector, and will say, actually, you know what, for your work, I think an open edition is going to be better than a limited edition for this particular series. Talk to people and ask questions. Just ask questions, and no question is ever too stupid. I ask questions all the time. And, you know, make sure you're ready. If someone says, I'm interested, have that portfolio ready to go, and be able to speak to where you think it might sit in this kind of complex world that we've been trying to dismantle today.
So I want to touch on what Poppy was saying about go to the shows. This is a good show, absolutely, to walk. And to see and meet with art publishers, like I mentioned before. But in terms of art licensing and really thinking about the product opportunities of art licensing, one of the shows that I love to tell artists about is Surtex. It happens annually in May. It's right here in New York. And the reason that it's such a great show to go to, and years ago, when Surtex first started, it was a show where artists and graphic designers really exhibited their work, and it was a surface textiles show. So you literally sold your work to people that created textiles, bedding, linens of all kinds. Today, Surtex has become really the key art licensing show in the United States, in my opinion. And another reason that it's so great is because it's here at Javits, and held at the very same time is the National Stationery Show. So you go to Surtex and you walk the Surtex aisles, and when you walk out of Surtex, you're walking the National Stationery Show. You can literally see artists and their work at Surtex and see the product that's been created with it at the National Stationery Show. So it's a great learning forum. They also have a wonderful education program that's part of Surtex. And then the Oh My God licensing show is the Licensing International Expo, held every year in Las Vegas. And this show, remember that pie chart that I showed at the beginning? Okay, this show is that pie chart. You walk in, and the first thing you're going to see how important licensing is in the entertainment and character portions of the business. Those companies that are in that piece of the business, Disney, Warner Brothers, Boy Scouts of America, keep going with all of those major brands, NASCAR, really, keep going. They have incredible booth spaces. Many of them are 2 stories, 3 stories, and just an unbelievable presence. There are also a whole section at licensing International Expo that is art agents, and it's a great place to walk, have your portfolio, like Poppy says, with you, and take the opportunity. Best time is to go maybe the next to the last day or the last day of the show, when some of the big retailers have already done their business and gone along. And now those agents are really ready to make some time to speak with you about the opportunities or what they're looking for. But it's all of those places are great educational places to learn more and get more of a perspective on what the opportunities are.
I think that you want to be confident going into some of these discussions. You want to be ready to at least know the basics of the lingo that people might mention, the terms that might come up. So doing just a little bit of research, both online and offline, goes a very long way. Obviously, the internet now provides a slew of potential resources. I think that just start with the basics, 101. There are numerous books out there. The Business of Being an Artist is a good one. Begin to talk to your peers who might have done this or might be a little bit ahead of you, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years. Talking to people, talking to other artists is probably a really, really good first step or second step. I think that learning about the pitfalls and the mistakes that others have made is the best shortcut to not making those mistakes yourself. And I think that other artists in your community and beyond, local artists and artist organizations, nonprofits, they all provide seminars and workshops on this concept. So if you can tap into those, that's quite useful. For instance, the New York Foundation for the Arts here in New York, we do a lot of workshops around this. So it's a great, mainly free resource. And then, this may be a little bit more advanced, but if you can find the services of a coach or a business mentor, someone who comes at this from a different perspective, that can be quite valuable as well. Someone who can give guidance around the business side of things or the more commercial side of things, that advice is often things that you don't even know you don't know. And I think when you find nuggets of value and of truth like that, then you'll be ready to go into these expos and these events just being more comfortable. And if you're comfortable, you can be more successful.
And along those lines, if you can start to look at the trade information out there, there are magazines like License Magazine, and there's information on the internet like Art Licensing Info, where you can go and you can get very current information that that's coming out on a very regular basis about where the industry is. You can get information like that online, and reading books, and you can kind of get a general sense of what's happening in art licensing. But these particular trade magazines and blogs are going to give you very current information on what's out there.
So Jay's actually being very modest. He's just finished writing a book about art licensing and the artist's guide to licensing, and it's available to each one of you to have at the end of the session today.
They're all down at the bottom there.
So now it's time to think about your brand. So I want to step back for a second. The way that we've been speaking up here, I don't want to suggest that the first person you're going to go to is a big box store like Walmart. Walk in and be like, hey, I read the trade magazines, I've had a few chats, I've walked a few shows, want to do some mugs with me? You're going to build your brand, and you're going to build your business slowly. It's going to be a step-by-step process. So on this slide, you're going to see the Ansel Adams Gallery. You're going to see Thomas Kinkade, Painter of Light. These are brands that evolved and developed not only in response to the art and the artist, but in response to how the market responded to them, right? Ansel Adams was a prolific photographer, but he is primarily, in the licensing sense of of his work, known as the photographer of the Californian coast. That's, and that is and that is the body of work that we were talking about earlier that has really worked for that estate in terms of building that business and that brand. And that's as distinct from his, role as an artist and a photographer in the other kind of art historical sense of the term. Do you have a brand identity? Are you on social media? How have you been telling your story there? What are the posts that get the most response? Because sometimes it's not the ones that you think yourself as a creator might be the easiest to understand. So begin to think, what is it about my work that differentiates me in this market? What genre am I working in? Am I to do with color? Do I have a great story that is going to be part of my brand? Am I speaking, as Vlad and Jay were talking earlier on, to a specific demographic? What does that mean for the way that I position myself and the way that I talk about myself if I'm looking for if I'm skewing towards a younger audience? And as you begin to have those conversations with yourself, as you begin to talk to other people about how they see you, you've got to develop a whole look and feel. You've got to think about logos, taglines, all these kinds of things. And again, don't do this in isolation. We've been talking a lot about talking to industry experts, and we've also been talking about, and we're going to get onto it in a minute, talk to those people who are going to be going out and selling for you, if that's how you're going to do it, because they'll have a good idea about how to position yourself. This seems quite like an awesome challenge to take on, but if you take it step by step, slowly your commercial brand identity will emerge.
And I think the takeaway on that also is that this is really your burden to bear. You can't look to the licensees to create your brand for you because they'll all do it differently. What you want to do is you want to be the creator of your brand, and you want to go to them with that brand so that they're going to see that as another aspect of you as an artist that's going to help them sell your work. And so if you come to them with a very strong identity, then they know how to position you and your work. If you don't, then they may not quite know what to do with you. So don't expect the licensees to do that part of the lifting for you.
Well, and I think that another point of that is, even here in this format, if you are looking to get into galleries, if you are looking to build a collector following as an artist, having that signature look, feel, is it your name? Is there something that is always part of what you do? Then that sort of starts to inform a tagline. And that becomes part and parcel of how you present yourself as well as your art. And no matter what you're talking about, that becomes a core piece of your program, of your story. It's part of you. And when you go to a gallery, when you're at an art show like Artexpo New York, or you're talking to a potential licensee, it's the same story. It's who you are. Years ago, there was a gentleman, his name was Tom Peters, and you can still find his book. But the book that I remember best that Tom wrote is The Brand You. We're all our own brand. So how do you present yourself? How do you project that? And that's really what they're talking about. And in licensing, there's nobody there sitting on the shelf. You're not standing there by the product to tell the story. So the first thing that they see is that brand. Think about brands. Think about any brand that you love. Did you stop by Starbucks this morning? I can tell you the names of stores. You can tell me what they look like inside. Because every single one of them looks the same. Williams-Sonoma, what does it look like inside? You know what it looks like inside. Apple, what does it look like inside? You know, that's part of their brand. That's part of their story. And so that's my key suggestion is, what's your story?
And I'm just going to jump in and say, at this show at Artexpo, we're representing a photographer called Elliot Landy, who took some iconic images of Woodstock and rock and roll in the 1960s. He's also taken a bunch of other fantastic images. Now, from a commercial point of view, I lead with the rock and roll. Of course I do. Because even though that's not his latest work, even though that's not the work that he is perhaps right now the most proud of, it's his story. It's recognizable. There's so many people have come up to me at this show and said, "Oh wow, you've got Elliot Landy's, picture of Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan up. God, I love that photo. I remember that photo." That's how your story can be fluid and dynamic, but you need to always, at the top of that story, needs to be a clear and visual cipher that people can latch onto immediately.
All right, now I've got my story, Jay. What do I do to protect it?
So you finally found somebody who is interested in your work, and so the next step is, how do I license them that work and protect myself in the process? And so the operative agreement on that is going to be a licensing agreement. And if you pick up this survival guide on your way out, there's going to be several chapters. One is approaching it from a licensor standpoint, where you are the artist licensing it to them. There's also a chapter on if I'm a licensee, what am I looking for? And but you're going to be creating a license agreement, and this is one area that I would really stress to you that if you're not experienced in it, I would not go it alone. If you don't hire an art law guy like me, you should at least have an licensing agent, or you should have another artist that you know that's gone through this before, because there are a lot of places you can make mistakes here that can really compromise your work. So when you're talking about a license agreement, of course, there are going to be questions about how do I get paid, and you're going to get a percentage generally of the wholesale sales, but sometimes that's you may also get compensated for every piece of art you deliver to them, along with a percentage. But every agreement is going to have a number of points that you're going to want to cover. Is it exclusive or is it non-exclusive? If you're going to license this to a territory, is it worldwide or is it just in the United States? I mean, why would you give somebody a license to sell it worldwide if their distribution is only U.S.? You want to limit them to the areas they're in so that you have those geographic areas to license to somebody else if it comes along. You want to set up milestones that if they fail to perform within a certain time, they don't get your product to market, that you can pull out of the contract. Yeah, there are license provisions for what articles they have, what's the duration of time. There's a dozen or so very important aspects that you need to cover within a license agreement, the biggest takeaway I would give you in terms of license agreements is you have to think the worst going in. You have to say, what happens if I give this guy this license and he doesn't do anything with it? You need to be able to get your rights back out. And unfortunately, sometimes what happens is an artist gets really excited that somebody is finally interested in their work and they're going to sign them up, and they made all these promises that they're going to get six-figure checks sometime soon, and then nothing happens. But now they've tied up this body of work. In some cases, like for example, one artist I represent is Thomas Kinkade, his estate now. Well, it took Tom a month sometimes to paint a piece. If that piece is tied up, it's not like you can just go whip out a second one. Your work may be such that you can't crank them out. So when you tie up 100 pieces, that's a big deal for you. And so you need to know how to back out of it. At one point in time, I was working with a sales guy at a publishing company, and I said, you have the best job in the world as a sales guy, because you sit around and you think about how everything's going to be great. I said, I sit around all day and I think, how can everything totally go to hell? And that's where I start my contracts. I always look and I say, where can this go wrong, and how can I protect the artist from that going wrong? So you need to have that mindset when you go in. I know you're excited, but you have to anticipate the worst and hope for the best.
Spoken like a true lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does it mean to work with an agent? Well, it means a bunch of things, and it depends where on this licensing journey you are. If you're at the beginning, you're going to expect to pay around, correct me if I'm wrong, 50%.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking. That's going to be what you're expecting to pay. As you build up an audience, as you get more popular, as you branch out into different product areas, into different retail streams, you're going to potentially be able to negotiate that percentage down. And how does it work? It works, it says here royalty share and commission. It's kind of, I think we're talking about the same thing. They're going to expect to see a percentage share of your profit. Now, you don't have to work with one agent. You can work with multiple agents. Jay was talking about exclusivity in licensing. That can be the same in working with an agent. If there's someone who's particularly good in the home decor, space, they know every duvet cover manufacturer or textiles in the country. You're going to work with them, but someone else might be better for another area of your business. So you need to think about whether or not you want to work with multiple or single agents. Also, there's a point here that says ownership rights. I would urge you to never consider giving up ownership at any point in dealing with licensing. And there may be some instances in which it makes business sense, but by and large, the rule is you retain ownership at all costs.
And to your point, you just have to think about every time you're working with someone, whether it's a licensee or an agent, their desire is to have as much of you as they can get. And your desire needs to be to give them only as much as they can handle. And so if a licensing agent doesn't have experience in a certain product, or if a licensee doesn't have experience in a certain product, you should think twice before you give them that, because they may not do anything in it. And now by giving them the right to be doing that, you're going to lose out on possibly getting somebody else in that could help you in that category. Licensing agents you can have more than one, but you should understand that they're going to want to have exclusivity, at least in the categories that they're working in, because they're going to be off hunting deals in the textile industry, for example. They don't want to run into another person that's working for you shopping the same deals. So keep in mind, everybody wants to get as much as they can, and it's your job as the artist to make sure you're only giving them things that you're comfortable that they can execute on.
The one thing that I would say about working with an agent is they've got connections. They've got connections that you may not have. Your brother-in-law, your best friend's husband might be connected to a product developer who works at the buying offices for Macy's. And so that's a great connection if there's a fit. But an agent has got those kinds of connections every day, all day, and that's how they work. Understand one thing about an agent is that there's a royalty share. So if it's 5% that you're getting in your licensing agreement off of wholesale sales, then you're going to share that 5% with your agent. And so that's another agreement that you need to have carefully crafted about the agent and how the agent is going to perform and what they're going to deliver in what kind of time frame.
And you know, when you look at bringing an agent on, you may instinctively say, gosh, giving up half of everything that comes in, that seems pretty pricey. But as an artist, you need to look and say, am I cut out to be out there pitching my own work? Do I have the time? Do I have the skill sets? You know, I'm going to go off. I'm going to find all these potential licensees. I'm going to negotiate with them. I'm going to land those deals. I'm going to get them all the materials. I'm going to get their royalty checks and possibly audit them in terms of figuring out if I'm really getting paid. There are so many things to that side of the business. And you may say, you know what, I'd give this up all day long for half of it all day long if it meant that I could just be doing my craft and somebody else is doing all this work. And so if you're not an artist who is naturally gifted at selling, that's where you really need an agent to come in and share that burden with you.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot to think about. So why do it? What's the bottom line? What is the advantage of licensing? And I think probably the number one advantage that we hear over and over again is scalability. It's being able to make revenue off of one piece in many, many different ways. That traditionally hasn't been possible for artists before the last maybe 50, 100 years. Before that, it was one piece, one revenue stream. But with the advent of consumerism and growing products across multiple different fronts, licensing allows artists to make money in a completely new and interesting way. And that way is quite broad and quite leveraged. But it takes time. It takes time and effort. It takes patience. It's not going to happen overnight. I think that's why, in many ways, we advocate using experts that could help you leverage that time in a better way, like attorneys, like agents, people within the industry who know what they're doing and who can take care of the things that you as an artist might not just want to deal with at all, like selling to Macy's. And then finally, dot your I's and cross your T's. Make sure the agreements are in your favor. Expect the worst, but hope. At least try to aim for the best, but expect the worst. And I think that if you can do that, as you grow your business, licensing could be a great extension of what you traditionally do as an artist.
And I think you'll find that the better your agreements are, the less problems you'll have because you've spelled out what the expectations are and everybody knows what's supposed to happen. The things that go sideways are always the undocumented, unanticipated things. But for example, if you don't have an audit clause in your agreement, then when they're not paying you, how are you going to get at their books so you can figure out what product they've sold? Are you going to require them to provide you work for approval, as they start mocking up? And at what stage does that happen? Do you just see it at the beginning, or do you get sent final samples at the end? What are your rights all along to say, hey, wait, this isn't what I thought was going to go on here? You really have to lay all that out in those agreements. And the more time you spend setting expectations on the agreements, the less problems you'll have on the back end.
The one thing that I remember in working with Thomas Kinkade is Tom said to me one day, he said, Linda, I always had this idea that, if I was a musician, I wouldn't just, write a score and hand it over to one guy and he would be the only guy that could play it forever. If I was an author, I wouldn't write a manuscript, a great novel, and hand it to one person and say, here's my book, read it and pass it along. I would hope that I would find a publisher for that book. I would hope that I could find a record label for that music. And so in licensing, what he was hoping is that it was a way to share his original artwork, to make it more available at all levels, whether it was limited edition, open edition, or a whole line of consumer products. And so all of that starts, the process. And, the planning, the collaborating, the marketing. And one of the things that, that I have said to artists most recently, because the world has changed from the time that Thomas Kinkade first started licensing his artwork 25 years ago, to where we are today in 2017. The whole world has changed. And there's so much that's available, as we've discussed, on the internet. There's a whole place on the internet where you yourself can create product. You can begin the whole idea of turning your artwork into product, and have a sales history when you approach an agent or when you approach a potential licensor. So there's different ways today that you can think about entering into the market, and certainly talking to experts who are in the marketplace, an attorney like Jay, folks like Vlad and Poppy from Mural, who are working with artists, bringing their artwork into their product. And then don't forget this book down here, and there have been seminars from coaches and agents here during Art Expo. And those seminars, the seminar from Krista Clowder, the seminar from Corey Huff, will be posted on our website under the Topics and Trends resource videos. So those will be available for you. Those are the kinds of things that will give you education and opportunities to understand this exciting world of licensing, but definitely a business world that takes some understanding as you enter into it, so that you're protected, your brand is protected, your artwork is protected, and you can enjoy the success and opportunity that is there for you. We're all going to be here for a few more minutes. If you've got questions, by all means, come up and ask us. Panel, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.